And so then the next verse, look at what it says. And then Nathanael said to Jesus, well, now let's talk about Nazareth. No, that's not what it said. No, he didn't say let's talk about the ideas, let's talk about the concepts, let's talk about the constructs. You know what he says? He says, Rabbi, you are the Son of God, and you are the King of Israel. And he began to follow him. And I don't ever know if they talked about Nazareth, they talked about the construct of Messiah, they talked about all of his issues of is the Bible true, or what about the miracles, or what about my objections, or what about, the tradition that I came from my grandparents. We don't know that, but all we know is that Jesus says this guy who's not a faker, who doesn't have any guile, doesn't have any falsehood, who's a real seeker of truth, you know what? It became personal for him in that moment in time. And that is the difference between people who really follow Jesus. You see, because here's the deal. Over the next 4 weeks, I'm praying and others are praying that we become people who truly follow him, not only with our head, but with our heart. You see, Jesus was talking to some Pharisees, and the Pharisees loved to tempt him. The Pharisees loved to try to trick him with questions that he couldn't answer, but he always turned a question back on them, and it makes the Bible very interesting reading, the tit for tat that goes on. And one time they came up to Jesus and said, Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? I mean, God's taught us all these things, all these laws to do, but what's the greatest? I mean, what do you say is the most important? And Jesus says, he says this, he says, love the Lord your God with all your mind, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your strength. And guys, I'm going to be honest. I love to love God first with my mind. I want to get all my questions answered. I want to understand everything about him. And that's why this series is good for me as well as you. Because God comes to me and he says, Brian, the way you follow me is not just getting all your questions answered, not just taking care of all your doubts, not just taking care of all your mental constructs, because I've called you to love me first, then understand me. Because if we will begin to take an approach that it's the mind, heart, and soul, the heart sometimes has to win out over the mind. And we will never fully understand God because he's God. And we will never fully have our questions answered. And the initial invitation to follow me is not about getting the questions answered or the mental stuff or the list. The fundamental thing that God asks us to do, if we're a skeptic, if we're an unconvinced person, your friends, your family, your coworkers, is primarily to love him. And as we love him, we begin to understand him. And if you have pushback about that, that's the way you want to be treated. You think about friendships and relationships you have. If you meet me and we become friends, as people get to understand the truth about your life and the truth about what you prefer and your background and all these kinds of things, you first want them just to love you for who you are. Love God first, and then you begin to understand him. And your Heavenly Father says this, learn to trust me, learn to know me, learn to have a relationship, a personal relationship with me. That's what Nathanael did. And maybe you'll be like Nathanael and say, I didn't get Nazareth figured out, and I didn't get all my questions answered, but I did come to know him, and I did come to follow him, and I did come to know his heart.